Welcome everybody to our ResearchHERS Fireside Chat of Oregon and Southwest Washington. We're super excited to have Oregon Oncology Specialists and OHSU talking with us tonight. As you're entering the room, please just go ahead and mute yourselves and turn your video off unless you're speaking. We're super excited to have everyone on this call tonight. But before we start our chat, I'd love to go over what our ResearchHERS goal is. Our goal is to increase awareness of the movement and get others involved. And here locally in Oregon and Southwest Washington, we're building a network of women in STEM, youth, and those already in the career field so that their voices are heard and the unique perspective of women is remaining a powerful and growing force, not only in cancer research, but all the other realms of STEM. We're super excited to have this ResearchHERS Fireside Chat with Oregon Oncology Specialists and OHSU, but our campaign wouldn't be anything without our ResearchHERS co-chairs. So I'm going to let Eileen and Lori introduce themselves as well.
Okay, yeah, my name is Eileen Berger, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the ResearchHERS event this is in our second year here. I'm a retired technology executive. Yes, I love being retired, I have to tell you. And I was a co-owner and CEO of a software services company for many years and got to sell it and be on my merry way. 10 years ago, I joined the American Cancer Society board locally. And I did that because of a young lady very close to me, my daughter's best friend since 6th grade. And at the age of 31, she was diagnosed with stage 3C ovarian cancer. And I had no clue how to help her. And then I got approached by the American Cancer Society. Says, oh, here's a way I can learn and help. And I have learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned, some because of her, but others because of ACS, is advances in research are so important. It kept her alive for 9 years. Every time she recurred, there were new treatments for her to try. And so she kept her alive for 9 more years. She got to celebrate her daughter's 12th birthday, and then she succumbed to her 9-year battle and passed away last year. And I have a good story about how research helped cancer. And it was my own cancer that was diagnosed this year in May. And it turned out they found my cancer, my breast cancer, due to a routine mammogram. So guess what that message is, ladies? Get screened. And it was so small that they said, "Oh, this we've got this." And they used a couple of new, fairly new procedures on me. One of which was I was really surprised at because it was so small. I got to have a one-time radiation treatment at the time of my surgery, a lumpectomy. And with that, and having all the everything come back good, that was the only treatment I have had to have. And they declared me clear of cancer in a span of 6 weeks. And I know that the advances in breast cancer research helped my story be so good. But unfortunately, there are cancers that there's just nothing that can help. And unfortunately, I have a story. My sister, almost at the same time, I was a little bit after I was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was diagnosed in June with pancreatic cancer. And that's a cancer that is not able to be detected early. And that's a cancer that once it is detected, you're already in late stage. And so she was in late stage. It had metastasized to different organs in her body. They kept her, comfortable. And last Saturday, she passed away after about just under 3 months. And it's research. There's not enough progress in research in so many cancers. And that's why research is so important and why we have to continue supporting research. And the other thing is, if all of our research cannot reach their highest potential, that's a huge problem. And that's what we're seeing with our women cancer researchers. Statistics shows that there are many barriers for our women cancer research to reach their highest potential. And if we can't have everybody reaching their highest potential, we can't get the advances we need to make advances in cancers like pancreatic, so that people don't have to suffer like my sister had to suffer. So this has become very personal to me. It started with one very personal, and now it's become much more personal as the time has gone by. So I'm glad you're here to join me in supporting the American Cancer and the ResearchHERS movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Lori?
Thank you, Eileen. I am Lori Barton. I joined the American Cancer Society Board of Directors for Oregon and Southwest Washington about 2.5 years ago. Really looking for ways to learn more about cancer. My mother-in-law is now on like a 6-year journey with a carcinoma cancer that started in her uterus. Now living down in Phoenix, trying to get support. And so American Cancer Society was very helpful to her because she came from rural Montana, and they helped her get housing and rides and different support that she needed when she had to travel for her chemo and radiation and just doctor's appointments. So that made me really want to give back and learn more. And so I joined the board of directors. And from there, I got the opportunity to be a co-chair for the ResearcHERS program. And I can tell you, the amount of things that we learned during these fireside chats are so inspirational. And the reach that we are trying to build through our network and reaching, again, like the younger generation, those that are still in high school or junior high, those women who have this drive and want to get involved, but perhaps don't have the resources and really know how to get through all of this. So that network is really important to us, and I'm very excited to have so many people involved in this meeting this tonight, but also our past fireside chats. If anybody ever wants recordings of those, they're just really, really good, lots of good information. And the more that we get the message out there, the bigger our network becomes. And we're proud to have all of you with us this evening.
Thank you so much, Lori. We'll hear from you in a little bit. Our ResearcHERS co-chairs make these chats and our campaign happen. Without our volunteers, I wouldn't be able to do it alone. So thank you so much, Eileen and Lori, for helping us along through not only this year, but last year as well. Without further ado, though, I'd love to introduce those who will be discussing with us tonight. We have Dr. Janelle Meyer with Oregon Oncology Specialists and Bree Mitchell, Executive Director, CEDAR OHSU. And then our moderator tonight is Lori Barton, our ResearcHERS co-chair and ambassador. We're super excited to hear from you all tonight. Dr. Meyer, I'll have you and Lori go ahead and start as soon as I can find Lori again.
Thanks.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Alexi. Well, I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Janelle Meyer. She's with Oregon Oncology Specialists. We're going to begin with kind of learning more about Dr. Meyer and really about what led your education and work that led you to this career. When was that moment that you said, this is my career path?
So it started, when I was in junior high school. I really enjoyed science and math, but I also really liked talking to people, and I didn't think I would be, happy doing something where I was more doing, bench research. I really wanted to spend time, talking to patients and people. So then when I went to college, I was pretty sure that I wanted to go to medical school. And that is what I ended up pursuing. And then once you get to medical school, you have to decide what you want to specialize in. And I was doing my surgical rotation with a surgical oncologist, and we took care of a lot of patients with pancreatic cancer. So I really loved that rotation. And I thought, maybe I want to be a surgeon until 3 in the morning when my beeper went off and I had to go to the operating room. I said, no, I don't think this is what I want to do. And I realized that what I enjoyed about that rotation was taking care of cancer patients. And so that's really when I first started thinking about doing oncology. And during the rest of my training, I just kept coming back to really enjoying the relationships that I developed with cancer patients and their families. And you really develop a close relationship with people when they're dealing with something very difficult in helping them through that challenge.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I can just from our own experience, the doctors, the nurses, everyone, it becomes a family situation, not just the patient, because we're all involved in that. And the doctor at the helm of the ship, if you will, is so important in helping direct us through those rough seas, if you will.
Right.
Can you share some of the work that you're doing in the clinical setting as an oncologist?
Yeah, so my daily job is seeing patients both in clinic and in the hospital. So I'm a medical oncologist. I work at a private practice oncology clinic. So most days of the week, I'm in clinic taking care of patients with cancer diagnoses as well as some benign heme conditions. But in addition to that, I also am the research director for the Salem Health Hospital Cancer Research Program. And I also am the principal investigator for a number of clinical trials in our clinic at Oregon Oncology Specialists. So I'm very passionate about clinical research and getting, patients onto clinical research trials here in Salem.
And I know this is a little bit of a sidebar, but COVID kind of slowed some things down. Are we back on track with clinical trials?
So here in Salem, we are. Last year in 2020, when COVID first started, we did pause some studies. But at this point, we have everything open and we're operating, as usual, but, trying to be as safe as possible, of course, with precautions in the clinic.
Wow, that's fascinating to hear because, those clinical trials are so important, especially in some of those cancers like Eileen had alluded to, the pancreatic cancer being one of them. You get to a point, I would imagine, where there's not a lot of options left. And so clinical trials is a great opportunity, I would think.
It is. I find that patients nowadays are, more savvy about their medical care and they do a lot of research online. Yeah. And I commonly will get asked, do you have any clinical trials? I'm interested in clinical trials. No longer do people feel like they're guinea pigs. They actually want to go on a clinical research study to have that opportunity to receive that, new exciting drug that might be the best next treatment for their cancer.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing what's out there and the potential of some of those new regimens that may make all the difference in the future. Mm-hmm. I'd like to kind of change gears just a little bit and have you talk to us about the challenges you have faced as a female in this field. We all know as women that we're all looking for that equity in this environment, whether it be as a physician, as a student, as a manager. Love to hear your journey and what you have seen.
So, I have always felt like I was equal to my male colleagues, but I did experience, some discrimination during medical school. I had actually very few women in my class, and there were some men who, maybe felt like we shouldn't be there. But I have always felt like I could do anything a man could do. I think the biggest struggles that I have had have come more recently when I decided to become a mother. Yeah. And, struggling with when do you have a pregnancy, during training, it can be very challenging and trying to time it so that you're not going to affect your colleagues. And then you realize that you can't time pregnancy. It doesn't always happen when you want it to happen. And then having to do job interviews while 9 months pregnant or while breastfeeding, that just created different challenges. And it's very obvious then that you are a mother or that, you're about to be a mother. And how does that impact your potential employer's decisions about hiring you? Yeah. And at first I was really worried about that. And then I started to realize that, I don't want to work for someone who doesn't want to hire me because I'm a mother. And it became more about finding the place that's going to be the right fit for me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know when I'm a salesperson, so nothing as glamorous as really what you do. But I remember traveling and having to run into different bathrooms in airports to breast pump, and oh my goodness, it's amazing what women do. I applaud all of us for working so hard and balancing raising families and everything else that we do. What advice do you have for women who are aiming to be future leaders in STEM? And I'm going to pause there because I know you had said that you first got this interest in junior high. And I think there's a statistic out there that we lose 30 to 40% of female students who are interested in science around that middle school, beginning of high school age. And I also know that one group of our ambassadors are part of the Sigma Delta Omega sorority, science-based, STEM-based sorority at Oregon State. And hopefully we have some of them on the call with us today. But what would be your message to those ladies?
So follow your passions. I mean, I don't think that as a woman, there's anything that we can't do if we put our minds to it. So if you really enjoy it and you're passionate about it, you should do it, and do it for yourself. You know, I have made decisions at times because I felt like it was what my mentor wanted me to do, or someone else, wanted me to do. But it's important to always reflect and think about what's important to you, and make sure that that's at the core of the decisions that you make.
Very good. And lastly, kind of a question around fundraising, which is always difficult in this climate, right? I mean, we've got so much going on in the world today, and COVID has certainly put a wrench in a lot of things that we try to accomplish. But what words of encouragement do you have for our ambassadors that are on, or those who are looking to consider supporting our campaign?
Yeah, so I'm in a fortunate position where I don't have to write grants or obtain funding, which is nice, unlike a lot of other researchers. I'm actually approached every day by pharmaceutical companies who, want me to open their clinical trials. So I haven't had to struggle with that, but I think that once again, if you're passionate about what you're doing and what your research is, that will come across to potential, people who are going to fund your research, and then looking for alternative sources of funding, rather than, just looking for government funding, looking at places like ACS that, may be able to fund your project because it's something that you're really passionate about.
Yes, thank you for that. We did have one question come up in the chat if you'd like to respond to that. The question is around, can you tell us any of the details about some of the clinical trials that you are or have worked on, and the research question they're trying to answer?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of examples. So, one is that we have a clinical trial here for patients who have a history of colon cancer that's been resected or removed. And we're looking at identifying cancer cells from their colon cancer in their blood to help determine if the cancer is all gone, or if it's gone and then, if it's coming back a year or two down the road. So it's a new technology to help identify colon cancer through a blood test, which is pretty cool. And then we also have a trial for patients with lung cancer that has metastasized or spread to other parts of their body that have a very specific mutation in something called KRAS, which is a gene that about 14% of lung cancer patients will have in their cancer. And there is now a drug, a pill, that is specifically targeted against that KRAS gene. Oh, wow. And is very effective. So we have a patient who is on this trial right now. His cancer had grown despite standard chemotherapy and immunotherapy. And now he is taking this pill and his cancer has melted away.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's just amazing the things that, we see nowadays with research that has come from our basic science colleagues who are doing this research in the lab and figuring out, different, better ways to treat cancer.
Yeah, definitely. So it's amazing too. We, on our last fireside chat, we had the privilege of having Grail represented on this, and Grail has developed the blood test to detect early detection of cancer, about 50 different variations. So it's interesting when you mentioned how you're looking at the blood in the from the colon cancer to see. I just had no idea that your blood has all that information in there.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. So, Lexi, I don't think we have any other questions right now, but we'll bring Dr. Meyer back if we do. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
That's perfect.
Okay, great. Well, then I will move over and do a little interview discussion with Dr. Bree Mitchell.
Great. Hi.
Hi. So Dr. Bree Mitchell with Cedar at OHSU, would you share with us a little bit about your own story and where you are in your career today?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is really fun. I have always been interested in science. When I was a kid, I was going to be an astronaut. Always had sort of that scientific inclination, I guess. And then in high school, I did a lot of education around HIV. It was a time when HIV had no real therapies. And so I was doing a lot of peer education about the risks and the ways you contracted HIV. And I started thinking like, well, there's no therapy for this. Maybe this is something I should study. So I got really hooked on the idea of being a researcher. And then I went to college and I had a really amazing mentor who worked more on cell biology. And I did research with him starting my sophomore year in college. And I got really intrigued by the cells in your body and understanding why they do what they do. And at the same time, my uncle was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I started to think about, what does it mean to have cancer and what can we do about this? And so in college, I decided to go to graduate school. I kind of always knew I was going to go to graduate school. So I did that and I ended up at the University of Washington. And there they have a strong partnership with the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And I knew that I was really interested in cancer. And so I wanted to work at Hutch for my PhD work. And so I started looking at what I wanted to do and thinking about like really understanding cells. But at the same time, I've always been really driven to see what I'm working on impact people. And so I got involved in thinking about early cancer detection as a graduate student and trying to discover new biomarkers for cancer detection. So new things floating in your blood, kind of what Dr. Meyer was talking about, except for before we know you have cancer, could we detect things that would allow us from a blood test to tell if you have cancer? So I worked on that as a graduate student and I really liked it and it was really interesting. At the same time, during my PhD, I did a concurrent degree program where I got a master's in epidemiology. And epidemiology is the study of the distribution of disease in a population, which I guess we all know much more about now thanks to COVID. But at the time I was in graduate school, I had never actually heard of epidemiology. It sounds like epidermis, so something in the skin, I didn't know, but I got interested once I found out more about it and I did a master's. And so that degree combination allowed me to think both at a population level about what was going on with cancer and at a cellular level, which has always been, I think, a real benefit to my career because it gives me a breadth of thinking that is not very common. So after graduate school, I was actually very certain that I wasn't going to work in academia ever again. which tells you something about certainty, and perhaps not being so certain about anything, as you can never predict where your life will go. But I wanted to work in industry. I wanted to get things that I was working on into people. And so I went from graduate school into industry, and I did research. Oddly enough, I did research at Intel, which is a silicon manufacturing company, as we know, but they had a biological research program at the time, and they were looking to see how they could use tools that they use for silicon wafer manufacturing for biological research. So I worked for them building a collaboration with a group of oncologists who are interested in early cancer detection and looking at ways that we could use some of the tools that they have at Intel to look at the blood in different ways, basically. So it's kind of a continuation of what I had done as a graduate student, but for a company. And so that was also really interesting and fun, and I really enjoyed it. After I had been there a few years, Intel decided that they actually didn't want to work on biology, which biology research has this very long time frame, and silicon wafer manufacturing has a very short time frame. So you make new products all the time. They have a different scale of time, and it wasn't super surprising that they decided the scale of biology wasn't what they were interested in. But I had learned a lot from working there, so it was a great experience. And I went from there to work on product management and marketing. So I moved away from the bench. I stopped doing real research and worked in product management and marketing for a couple of companies that sold instruments to research and software to research. And that was also really interesting because it was a very different side of science. It let me use my scientific sort of expertise and experience, but in a really different way. So I was working with customers, I was working with users, was helping to figure out what worked about the instruments or software and what didn't, and then iterate on it. And I really enjoyed that job. And I would probably still be doing something similar, but I stayed friends with some of the people I had worked with at Intel that I collaborated with in academic institutions. And one of them got a faculty position at Stanford. And he said, don't you want to come work on early cancer detection again? We've got this center we're building at Stanford. It's called the Canary Center. And they were looking for a deputy director of that center to come help them kind of build the center and figure out how to work on early cancer detection in a collaborative way. And I was like, yeah, I do actually want to come work on that. I do really, in my heart, believe in early cancer detection, and I want to see that come to fruition. And so, so I went to Stanford from industry and worked there for a number of years. Really enjoyed it. The thing I loved about it was I was back in the kind of seat of innovative science and really seeing like the real work onto these very difficult problems and the ways that we could approach them from lots of different perspectives, from engineering, from biology, from math. And so I really liked working there. And I wanted to continue kind of doing some of that work, but I lived in San Francisco, and my son was born, and we said, it's very expensive to live in San Francisco. Yeah. What should we do? So I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Olympia, and then I went to graduate school in Seattle. So my husband and I looked at the Pacific Northwest, and at the time that I moved, the OHSU was doing the Night Cancer Challenge. So they had just been given from Phil Knight $500 million to do early cancer detection research if they could match that money with other fundraising. And so they were in the midst of that at the time I moved here. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. They're going to have the money to do it. So I'm going to go to OHSU, and I'm going to hope for the best that I can be involved in this somehow once they raise the money. So I did that. And I worked with the Pancreatic Research Center here at OHSU, which was also fantastic. It's a really, really great center. It's called the Brendan Colson Center. And the fundraising was done for the Night Cancer Challenge, and they hired the director, and he hired me. And so he and I together have built the Cancer Early Detection Advanced Research Center, which is what CEDAR stands for. We're part of the Night Cancer Institute at OHSU, and we are focused on cancer early detection research. Entirely as a center, we only work on cancer early detection, which is fairly unique for universities because of the incredibly generous donations from both Phil and Penny Knight and the community at large. Over 10,000 individual donors donated to that fundraising campaign. The building that we work in was built with taxpayer dollars. So an amazing amount of support from Oregon and the whole world really to do this work. And because of that, we are able to both fund and do research ourselves. And so that allowed us to build a center that is very different from other centers that have to kind of follow the rules of NIH funding, for example. We get to fund research that's much riskier, that doesn't have any proof of concept if we think it's a good idea, that could be much more blue sky and out of the box. And so that's been really fantastic. The way we fund research at Cedar is that we fund project teams. So we want people with different backgrounds and different perspectives to come together to address a problem in early cancer detection and really use all of that expertise to think about it in ways that no one has done before. And so it's been really fun to be able to do that, to build that center. Now we're now at 140 researchers at all levels.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and we have about 50 projects at any given time of research. So we've got all kinds of really exciting things that are going on in the center.
Wow. Can you give us a little insight into some of the research that is being done?
Yeah, I can tell you about a couple of sort of I won't say favorite in case somebody watches this, but a couple of the things that I'm really excited about. On one of the projects, so one of the things we do a lot is collaborate. So we collaborate outside of our center within OHSU. We collaborate across the world, really, and because we really believe that what you want to do is find the holes and address them, not reinvent something. So we also have a lot of industry collaborations. So one of our industry collaborations is with a company called SEER, and they work on proteomics, which is the proteins, and it allows us to look at proteins in new ways so they can kind of filter them out of blood in really fast ways. And at the same time, we have a new instrument, a new mass spectrometry instrument that's super sensitive that lets us look at very small amounts of proteins. So we have a project going that is going to look at 1,000 blood samples from men who have prostate cancer and men who don't have prostate cancer, and allow us to look for signatures in proteins that might be able to differentiate prostate cancer and not just that, because it's so many. Nobody's ever done 1,000 people before, because before this the technology was just too slow. Because we can look at so many, we can also look at things like who had progressed to more severe disease and who never really did, because that's a really big challenge in early detection. Some people's disease is what we call indolent. It means it's probably just going to sit there and never hurt you, and the treatment we give you is actually going to hurt you worse. Yeah. And some people's disease is very aggressive and it's going to hurt your body really fast, and we don't really have good ways of telling the difference. And so this is the first time we're able to do a study at a scale that will allow us to really look at some of those differences. So it's a really exciting study. I can't wait to see what comes out of it. We're just starting it now, so it's
wow. That is I don't even know what to say on that. I just want to learn more. I mean, I could just keep listening to this because it's just so fascinating to hear what's being done out there. Interesting, and I asked this to Dr. Meyer as well. A female, have you faced any particular challenges on your path to female for your cancer research?
I mean, I think that unfortunately, as women, we are gonna, for the foreseeable future, continue to face challenges. Certainly, I have been the only woman in the room very frequently, especially as I've gotten more senior in my career. And I think that's, it can feel kind of lonely, and it can feel, you certainly are exposed to all kinds of perspectives about whether you should or should not be in that room. So I think that, yes, I think that the thing that's been really key for me has been having strong mentorship and having other women that I can talk to, especially when something happens and you're like, wait, that happened, that doesn't seem quite right.
Right.
So that's been a really huge help. And I try to do that now for other women, who are more junior. And I think that I can see that definitely has an impact. The other thing I agree, Dr. Meyer talked about being a parent, right? Being a mom is just, it makes it harder, I think, as women, rightly or wrongly, a lot of the emotional burden of child rearing falls to us, no matter how evenly you split your workload. And I'm extraordinarily fortunate. My husband is a stay-at-home dad, so it gives me tons of flexibility in terms of how I approach my job and what I can say yes to. But at the same time, there's a lot of balancing that happens when you're parenting, and a lot of those questions about what is my employer going to think about parenthood. And I think that's probably true across genders now.
Yeah.
How are parents perceived, and how will I be penalized for being a parent? And I think finding the places where that's not the case, or being able to create them, which I feel like I've been lucky enough to do, is really important, and making sure that you find a place to work that aligns with your values.
Right. Well, hopefully the one silver lining in this whole COVID pandemic has been the resurgence of a little work-life balance. I think all of us got to get off of the merry-go-round a little bit and slow down and smell the roses, as they would say, a little. And I think hopefully, if we have to find that silver lining in anything, maybe that was some of it. I know I asked Dr. Meyer about the clinical trials and the slowdown of that during COVID. I'm assuming there was some impact on what you guys were working on as well at Cedar.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so we actually have a clinical trials unit at Cedar that's doing really exciting early detection clinical trials. You mentioned GRAIL. We were actually the top accruer for the last GRAIL study. So they did a study where they were looking at the actual impact of doing a test on a otherwise healthy seeming population, identifying people who were signal positive for their tests, and then telling them that they had cancer potentially, and working that all the way through to diagnosis. So we were involved in that study, and we were the top accruing site despite COVID, which made us shut down. We shut down all of our research in our clinical trials for 3 months last year, which was a huge impact to people's productivity. It's very difficult to shut down biological, ongoing research. We had cells, we had mice, we had, all kinds of things. But fortunately, I think we were able to really manage it pretty well. We ramped down things without losing much, and we're able to ramp back up pretty quickly, and be back to work. And interestingly, that 3 months that everybody was off, you talk about it being a less work time. For me, it was way more work, but I think I might be the anomaly. But a lot of people had a lot of time to think during that time, which meant that we had so many ideas at the end of it that we're still like trying to process what are all the good ideas that came out of that time, and how do we fund them, and what do we do?
And how do we, exactly. There was a lot of thinking to be done. It was either thinking or watching TV, or, there wasn't a whole lot else going on, I guess, during that time. I know that ACS has been an integral part in what you're doing. Can you explain how ACS has helped with your research?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I just approved today a postdoc's application for an ACS award. So certainly as a funder and a potential funder of research, it's really important. I think in particular for early career people, there's a lot of really great opportunities for postdocs and junior faculty that other organizations don't offer. And so that's been really, really helpful. I think also, ACS has a lot of data. So it's a big collator of data from cancer reporting all across the country. And I use that data all the time to think about, what are the cancer dynamics within the state of Oregon? What are they across the country? What are the disparities of cancer across different groups? So that data is incredibly helpful as well.
Yeah, that data out there around, like what areas, we break it down by zip codes and everything. It's just, it's amazing what we have at our fingertips these days, and how we can then use that data to dissect what's kind of going on. So again, just like I asked with Dr. Meyer, and I probably could have done this all with both of you at the same time, but we'll do it one at a time. Women getting into STEM, future leaders. We've got students here on the call. Probably don't have any of our, junior high kids or high school kids, but maybe we have some science teachers here on the call, which would be great. What is your message to those young folks looking to get into this field?
I think, the thing is, a lot of people want to help young people getting into the field. And I think a lot of times people feel nervous or shy about asking for that help, or like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But I really always think that students in particular, you have this amazing power in that everybody wants to help a student. So if you want to do something, ask, right? If you want to come do an internship, you should ask me if I have an internship. Maybe I don't, but I'll probably refer you to someone else, or I'll refer you to the program. So I think use that sort of tap into the fact that people really want to be helpful, and find yourself both a mentoring group and sort of a direction that you want to go. It doesn't have to be exactly, I want to do this thing, but this is kind of, I want to be helpful to people. I want to get my thing out into the world. I want to, find yourself a little bit of a direction, and then go start talking to people who have a work in that space, and learn as much as you can, because like I said, they'll be happy to talk to you. Go listen to the other Fireside chats, because I listened to one of them and it was awesome. Yes. So you take advantage of all of these things that are around you, and learn as much as you can, so that as you make decisions and as you move through your career, you have more information.
Right. And utilize that network, right? I mean, everybody's out there, especially as women, wanting to support other women. I mean, that's what this campaign is about, is how we can all come together and support one another. So with that though, too, what words of encouragement do you have for our ambassadors, or anyone else who may be on our Fireside chat tonight who's considering supporting this campaign?
What words of encouragement? I mean, just go forth and do.
Do it. I like that's good enough, right? Join the cause. We've got great things going on. I'm sure Alexi will also tell us about the C's candies that we are working on as a fundraiser, where, if anybody wants a little chocolate treat for the holidays, we've got a link that you guys can buy candy or sell candy. Question in the chat for both of you. How can we find out more about local studies that are going on and learn kind of some of these results? We talked about the clinical trials going on with Dr. Myers at the Oregon Oncology Specialists. We're talked about all this work that CEDAR is doing. Is there information that comes out that, if I wanted to go research something, how could I find some of this stuff?
So I can start, I guess, clinical trials wise, all our clinical trials are online. They're all on the OHSU website, and also on the clinicaltrials.gov website. So you can find ongoing.
I did not know this. Okay. I'm writing this down.
And And then CEDAR has a website. So if you're interested in finding a little bit more about what CEDAR does, you can go to ohsu.edu/CEDAR.
Okay.
And we have some information there about what we're doing. I would also put a pitch that we have a lot of internships and we love to have students come work with us. And so if you're interested in interning or getting really involved in the research, definitely check out the website for that too. It'll give you links to internships and you can get involved and find out firsthand what's going on.
And I'd like to go back about 30 years and start over, because this would be awesome. Dr. Meyer, what about yours, the clinical trials, things that you guys are working on at Oregon Oncology Specialists? Is any of that open that people can see?
Yeah, so all of our clinical trials are listed on our website. So if you just Google Oregon Oncology Specialists, there's a clinical trials section on our website, and we have them all listed. And then the Salem Cancer Institute also has a website with the trials that are open through the hospital. And these are all trials that are registered through clinicaltrials.gov as well. So there's more information there. And eventually, hopefully, they'll be published, once they're completed, and get that information about results out there.
Oh, that's just great. That's great to hear. I think, unless there's any other questions in the chat.
It looks like, just as a follow-up to the internship, Eileen was asking if we take high school interns, and yes, we do take high school interns. We take both high school and college interns, and they're through OHSU established internship programs. One of them is an equity internship program, and the other one's called CURE. So if you go to OHSU and search for internships, you'll find them.
Great information. Great. Thank you both for this amazing information that you've shared today. It's just been such a privilege to hear about what you are doing and your backgrounds. I could sit here and listen for hours, but I know we only have an hour. So I will turn it back over to Alexi, but thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Again, thank you both so much. I agree with Lori. I could sit here for hours and just listen to everything that you guys have to talk about and give advice on, because not a lot of people know what to expect as they move through their career. And especially if you're in high school, you don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. So this encouragement is very helpful for those that are on the chat tonight. So thank you so much. Our ResearchHERS campaign is not quite over yet. While this is the last chat for the year, we do have our Seas Candy fundraiser coming up. It's right now through December 3rd. Our link is on our website and it will be in a follow-up email. Instead of buying your sweet treats at a retail store, buy them through our Seas Candy fundraiser, where the proceeds will come back to our ResearchHERS campaign. We also have our celebration coming in January, in the middle of January, where we're going to get together in person, not on Zoom, to celebrate all of the accomplishments that we have made and begin our 2022 campaign for ResearchHERS. And we look forward to having you all with us if you can join us. There's more ways to get involved other than our celebration and chat. So become a part of our network, become an ambassador, and help us fundraise for our campaign. If you or your company wants to sponsor a chat or our celebration, please get in contact with us. Join us at the celebration in January, donate today, or continue the discussion on your own. You can visit acsresearchers.org/Oregon-Southwest Washington to learn more about all of the things that we're doing here locally and nationally, and we hope to see you with us. Thank you so much to our sponsor, OHSU, for being a part of our chats. Thank you again to Oregon Oncology Specialists as well for being a part of our call and supporting us through our journey. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the chat and you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.
Good evening.